Good morning, and we'll wait for people to filter in here to another weekly episode of Account-Based Friday and some administrivia here before we jump in. In the upper corner, and I point to my right, hopefully it's up to my right, there is a code that you can scan that has 180 best practice videos on sales and marketing of guests that we have every week. Feel free to subscribe so you get the latest and greatest. Of course, if you have a question of sales and marketing and you don't want to go through all 180 videos, certainly send Meg, my co-host, or I an email, and we could certainly figure out where you could spend your time. Also, this is your session as much as it is our session. You have the ability to comment below, and we have the ability to promote your comments into our thread and into our stream. So I'm hoping today with our special guest who's joining us from Forrester, and by the way, this is very unusual that we have this guest speaking with us today for multiple reasons, but we have Terry Flaherty, who's the VP and Principal Analyst at Forrester, and we're going to be talking all things buyer group, waterfall. Really excited to dig in, especially given all his other commitments outside of this and coming up for the Forrester conference. So Terry, really grateful that you could invest your time with us today. So jumping in, each week we start off with a poll, and this week no different. And we tried to tie the poll into our speaker. And so the question is the age-old question that's probably coming up for, I don't know, 2-3 decades, sales and marketing alignment. But it seems like, is it getting better? Is it getting worse? I don't know. I just asked the question today, what is your biggest challenge? I had the lack of shared goals and metrics as kind of the key unifier between sales and marketing. Meg, how did you respond to this, or what was your reaction?
I voted D because I've been in organizations where one of these, all of these, and something different altogether have all been true. So I had to say that I think in general, based on my own experience and what I'm hearing, it can be all of the above. For sure, though, if you start with a lack of shared goals and metrics, you don't have much hope for anything else to work. It does start there. So I 100% agree with you, as that's like the tip of the need, but then it quickly can spiral into all of these other things, or get fixed by fixing that. And that's why we're so happy to have you here, Terry. Thank you so much for joining us. And we're really excited to learn from you. And kind of get the benefit of you being on the front lines of understanding the major shift taking place in B2B right now. But first, what say you on our poll?
I wound up the same as you did, Megan. I said all of the above, actually. And when we think about kind of all of the above and sales and marketing alignment, just the revenue process and the changes, we sort of think about 3 different buckets. Right. And so to improve alignment, number one, it's focus. Right. And so that's the goals and metrics, and not only goals and metrics, but it's, what are we focusing on from our customer perspective? And obviously we'll talk a lot about kind of changing the focus away from MQLs into the concept of buying groups and opportunities. Right. Another big piece in alignment is change the work. And so often still, there's silo functions. Marketing produces leads, throws it over to the BDR, or they qualify. BDR throws it over to the sales, and they sell. And there's like no collaboration, no communication that's going on between those functions on what's happening right now and how do we make it better, right? And then the last piece, and I think it's the biggest piece actually, is change the culture. And we wind up with just this ingrained sort of view and culture of, well, sales does this, marketing does this, it's separate functions. But one of the things that we're seeing, I think this is brilliant, is and a lot of our clients now, they're not even calling themselves sales and marketing anymore, right? They're calling themselves go-to-market. And yeah, they have different roles within that function, but they're part of the go-to-market team, not the sales team or the marketing team, right? So I think it's those 3 things, right? Change the focus, change the work, change the culture. And when I do that, that's how I really, and if I don't, it's really nothing more than a cafeteria poster.
Terry, you probably have a great perspective of kind of the history here of where we've been to the funnel to maybe even present day of what you're about to release. And I know you can't get into details or too many details there, but maybe we could just kind of take a walk back in time to level set everybody and bring them up to speed. And then we can dive a little bit more deeply into buyer groups and into the funnel itself. But how have you seen the history of the funnel kind of evolve over time?
It's evolved a lot. And so I joined Sirius. It's been 11 years ago now, which is hard to believe. Right? And I had the good fortune when I came in to really focus on the revenue process from day one. And back then, I mean, that Sirius Decisions, pride and joy, the key of Sirius Decisions was the waterfall. And back then, it was kind of based on just what technology and what processes looked like then. But the waterfall was very lead centric. And it's basically, we marketed to people, they went through a process, ultimately turned into a closed won deal, but it was all around the concept of individual people. And back in like 2016, 2015, I started particularly, and Kerry Cunningham, my colleague, we had clients that were coming to us going, we can't use the waterfall anymore. And it's like, why? And it's like, well, we're doing this new thing called ABM, right? and we're focusing on accounts and opportunities, and we're intentionally targeting multiple different people in an account. And the waterfall says, okay, we got 5 people. It wasn't really focused on, these are 5 people coming from the same account, and they actually represented 5 opportunities. Yeah, they actually represented 1 opportunity. The waterfall had this logical concept that a lead and MQL equal an opportunity. And so when I had 5 people coming from an account, it was 5 individual people. And so the conversion rates and everything was on the assumption that one person was going to progress into 1 opportunity, and didn't recognize 3 people or 5 people really came to the same opportunity. So the better job people did in ABM, the worse their metrics started to look like. Because it's like, we got 5 people instead of 3. My conversion rate went down because I was 20% instead of 33%. And it was really actually the same opportunity. So we kind of recognized back in 2016, 2017, we needed to make the change. And so, now 7 years ago at Summit, and Megan was there, Megan was involved in this process, we said, okay, it's time to make a change. And we need to recognize that it's really the concept of the buying group and the opportunity we want to focus on. And so we launched back then what we called the demand unit waterfall. And the demand unit waterfall, we looked and said, well, if I think about what makes up demand, right? You have to have a buyer. That buyer has to have a business need, and we need to have a solution that can address it. And it was, and I had read this book, a funny story. I was reading this book on the history of DNA. Right. And they were talking about the building blocks of life. And I just happened to have this, silly question come up of, well, what's the building blocks of demand? And it's like, well, you have to have a buyer has to have a need, and you have to have a solution. And instead of calling it a molecule, we called it a demand unit. And that was the first shift back in 2017 to say, okay, we're going to think about, buying groups and opportunities moving through the process as opposed to individual people, leads that then convert into opportunities. And the beauty of that is then we're all sort of focused on the same entity, focused on an opportunity all the way through the life cycle. And when we first launched this, people, it was a huge, big disturbance in the force. We like to joke. And Kerry and I had 25, 30 discussions a week on this with marketers for probably 2 years. And I think everybody back then kind of thought we were way far ahead and crazy. Right? It's like, this is a really cool idea. It's really interesting, but it's never going to happen. So we kept the faith. And in 2021, we launched a new version of the opportunity concept based waterfall that said, hey, not only is it we need to understand opportunities, but we also need to recognize that we sell things to net new customers, but we also sell things to existing customers, and we do different, have different resources applied to those, maybe some slightly different process, and they perform dramatically differently. A retention hopefully will perform significantly different than a net new acquisition. And same thing with the cross-sell and upsell. And so we added sort of the dimension that says we need to think about Not just the acquisition opportunity, which had pretty much been the history, kind of focus of the original waterfalls, but we need to think about across the entire customer lifecycle that they're going to buy multiple different things. And we want to be able to track all those. And that was sort of an evolution also in the role of marketing, because 11 years ago, 10 years ago, marketing is pretty much just net new acquisition. And then it's like, okay, now sales has this customer, go away, leave us alone, go get me new stuff. But thank goodness we've matured a lot. And it's now saying, hey, we need to focus, we need help. As an organization, we need to work together, not just to get new logos, but basically to sell our entire portfolio into our customer base too. Right? And so now it's been, we did that in 2021. We did what we call the B2B Revenue waterfall. It's been a slow and steady sort of challenge up until about a year ago. And it's been really interesting because, we were joking right before we started. It's like buying groups and opportunity-centric processes, that's now the cool thing. That's the buzz. And, it used to be people would be kind of, why are we going to do this? How are we going to do this? I don't think we could possibly do it. And pretty much every single account that I talk to now, they're either live, right? Or they've got active projects on it, or it's on their roadmap. It's a key piece of initiative. So buying groups is sort of the new cool, hot buzzword in the industry. And it's that because it's the right thing to do. And we're seeing, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, we're seeing just incredible results when organizations, and it's not just buying groups as much as it recognizing that there's lots of signals that are being produced, and we need to leverage and understand all those signals. And one of the key things I want to understand when I look at the signals is that I can identify and form buying groups. But it's really just getting a full view of everything that the buyer is telling us and leveraging that so that we're a lot smarter and a lot more relevant for them. And that's what's driving this dramatic improvement in the performance of the revenue process.
Terry, I mean, you've been speaking the truth on this for a long time. And it's been surprising to me, to be honest, that it's taken as long as it has for people to embrace. But I think you nailed the reason right up front. And I saw Kenny jumping in to agree that culture really is the hard thing to shift. And I would love, I mean, even though companies and marketing leaders are adopting this, I'm sure they still have an uphill challenge with convincing their boards, their investors, their fellow C-suite members, if it's a CMO, and even just the rest of the team in marketing to make this shift, even though it's just the right thing to do and the reflection of reality. But what is your advice to those who want to help make this shift and make a persuasive argument to others that it's the best thing to do?
Yeah, we kind of recognize it's been interesting. We do a survey every year, and the survey is like, why aren't you doing this yet? And the survey always has 4 questions, and it's like, well, it's too hard, right? Or we'll never get sales to go for it, or as a marketer, I'm not bought into it, or it's culture. And it's been kind of interesting because when we first talked about this concept, it was fairly even. And in fact, it's too hard probably was the number one thing. But now by like 90% of the response, it's culture. So we've done a lot of work over the last 3 or 4 years thinking about how to address this. And we kind of picked up a sound bite, and I'm sure if you followed any of Forrester Research, you're probably sick of me talking about goodbye MQLs all the time. And that was kind of a cute, interesting sound bite, and it resonates with marketing people. They get it. And it's like, yeah, I know we need to make a change. And we'd have the 14 reasons why MQLs are bad and all this. And it absolutely resonated with marketing, but executives didn't care. At the end of the day, they didn't care. And because of the changes we have to make, if the executive didn't care, it was, we had a number of clients where marketing or sales or a single function or a small group of functions would try to make this change, and it ultimately failed. And it failed not because of technical, but much more of just adoption and culture and everything. And so one of the things we've recognized, if we're thinking about especially executives and we want to change the culture, the thing they care about more than anything is business impact, right? And so our firm, what we're seeing now is if we're going to change the culture of an organization from the top down, what we have to clearly show is that saying goodbye to MQLs, embracing signals, embracing buying groups has enough of a business impact to get their attention. And that's what we're starting to see. In fact, I'm doing a session at Summit, and I build a model that starts to estimate what's the business impact that you actually get by making this change. And there's 3 different drivers, if you will, of revenue improvement that happens when I move from the MQL into the concept of buying group and opportunity. Right? And so the first, and this one is just, some of the results we're seeing, I even kind of feel silly talking about the results because it's like nobody's going to believe this. But the first is, what's the value? What's the difference if I send sales a single person and say, here's Bob, the chief security officer or whatever from Acme, and that's all we give them, which is typically what's happening in an MQL-centric process. We're going to see some sort of conversion rate, and we'll even set up a meeting. BDR sets up a meeting. They send that one person, and so that's like the first discovery meeting. And if I look at the conversion rate from that discovery meeting down to close one, and I say, okay, if I send one person, conversion rates X, what kind of improvement are we seeing if instead of one person, marketing and the BDR are sending 3 people, right? And they verify these are 3 people that are involved in the buying process. And on the low end, consistently, we're seeing like a 25% improvement in the conversion rate from the discovery meeting to close one. So if my conversion is 10, then it's pretty much standard. They're going to see like 12.5% conversion rate, which is not trivial. But here's where you just sit there and go, are you kidding me? We have organizations, and in fact, some of the biggest organizations in the world, and they are saying now and seeing that when they pass buying groups of 3 or 4 people, they're seeing 200% improvement in conversion rate. And one that we're going to unveil at Summit, 400% improvement in conversion rate. Right, so dramatic, and it makes sense because if you think about it, instead of for a football analogy, instead of starting on the goal line having 100 yards to go, and I hand somebody that single person, I'm giving them 3 people, and these are people that they would have had to go find on their own if I didn't give it to them. And the crime is these are also people that we see in marketing that we know are engaged, but our process has been so focused just on that single person that it's criminal. We're hiding information. We're intentionally making the sales process more complex because we're not sharing information. And when I do, it's kind of like they're starting in the 40-yard line instead of the goal line. It's just they have that much more insight, that much more advantage. So that's cool. That's a really big dramatic improvement. But then everybody's like, well, wait a second. So 3 people in a buying group instead of 1. I get you're improving the quality or the quantity. Quality, but what about quantity, right? There's always been this massive argument, talk about sales and marketing alignment, the classic argument of marketing going, oh, I want to give great quality, and sales going, heck with quality, just give me leads. I want leads, right? And what's really fascinating is by making this shift and thinking about buying groups and focusing on buying groups, we're seeing actually delivering both, right? Because we're just talked about, we improve the quality of what I'm sending. But when I think about signals and leveraging that context of the signal in the buying group, I'm actually improving the quantity of opportunities I'm sending to sales too. Because right, in an MQL-centric world, we're waiting for one person typically to do some sort of magical thing to hit that threshold. And we're ignoring all the other signals that exist. But when I look into the fact that a common one that you just sit there and say, my goodness, you're kidding. But if I had 3 people from Acme come to my website, download something, register, most of the time, I don't even have the intelligence to recognize I have 3 people coming from the same company interested in the same solution, which is a buying group. We keep on looking for that magical, here's the MQL. Right? And so changing my prioritization to be able to recognize that 3 people from the same company are interested in the same solution. And then let's take it one step further, anonymous signals. I've got all these people coming to my website, and only like 5% of the people that come to my website, if that, are going to identify. So call it 95% of my web traffic is anonymous. but I still understand what account they're coming from. I understand what solution they're looking at. So that's another important signal to understand is I have people coming to my website and maybe 5 unique discrete people are coming to my website. That's important information because that separates from, hey, this is one person that's just rogue and doing stuff versus there's something going on there, right? And then take it one step further to third-party intent. These companies are out researching solution, our topic solutions like ours. We just don't know about them. They might not know about us. But when I start incorporating that and prioritizing on that, all of a sudden I'm finding opportunities that I overlooked in my existing database because I wasn't prioritizing correctly, or I didn't have my marketing program say, hey, just the fact that I've got one person, that's a great start. Let's go target marketing programs to the rest of that company and that buying group. When I change the prioritization and I change my program strategy, all of a sudden I'm finding opportunities I overlooked, and I'm finding opportunities that were hidden. And so not only am I improving the like I said, the quality of what I'm sending, but I'm improving the quantity. And we have organizations now that kind of based on the results they're seeing so far are saying, hey, this is going to make a difference of $2 billion to our business or $750 million to our business. And here's the key. They're not asking for an increase in marketing budget. Not at all. What they really ultimately are asking for is we need to make a change in process. We need to make a change in culture. And when we do that, we're basically, kind of bringing our capability up to where the customers are, because the buyer's in control now. Right? You probably I've seen like all the research that Carrie's been doing. Buyers aren't even engaging with vendors until they're 75% of the way through their buying process now. And when they do talk to vendors, decisions already been made. And so if I'm waiting for an MQL to surface, it's way too late. Right? The buyers already figured out what they're going to do. They may be willing to talk with me just as column fodder or validation that their decision is right. But I need to start my process way earlier, and I need to leverage signals that I never paid any attention to before. But if I don't, I'm always going to be second or third to the party, and I'm not going to get selected. And we kind of see this all the time. The conversion rate for a lead-centric process, less than 1%. So things have to change. And as you can see, I get geeked out on it because it's after 7 years, it's really starting to happen. And that's what's so cool about it.
Terry, that's an amazing perspective. And, I think we hear in the background, you are definitely in need because people are picking you.
I wish I could. Yeah.
No worries. No worries. The, just thinking about, and I want to pop up an anonymous comment here of somebody going through that change management.
Yeah.
And I think that this person actually sent this to me in advance of the discussion. And full disclosure, our consultancy, we support and operationalize your model as well as a lead model. But this question often comes up in the conversation of saying, hey, we want to transition from lead to contact account and opportunity. And it's at the PE level. It's almost like we've created our own little nightmare here because we've sent all the VCs and the PE people to the same conferences when I was a serious customer that I would go to. It's like a tattoo in their mind. I've got a lead, therefore I've got revenue, I've got hiring plan, I've got marketing plan, like lead dictates everything. So I think this person's concern was, hey, I'm working with PE firms. How do I change their thinking? And I think in the course of our dialogue here, you've addressed that, but I don't know if you have any other thoughts on her question.
Yeah. Well, and we talked a little bit yesterday when we were getting ready for this. It's been really interesting because PE firms in particular, but just I think the leadership in general, they're so used to the MQL, and a lot of PE firms will have sort of one benchmark that they're applying to everybody, which is scary. That's just wrong. Right? Benchmarks, like in our lead-centric environment, we still talk to a lot of clients, and I've got a lot of benchmarks in lead-centric processes, and you have to understand the context. What type of customer? What type of market readiness? We call it demand type. But and is the BDR team doing deep qualification, or are they scheduling appointment? There's all these factors that come into it. So there's actually like 220 or so different benchmarks that we would apply in a lead-centric world. And PE firms don't. They often just pick one and compare. So that's fundamentally wrong. But I think the key is, it's somewhat easy to understand, and they just and we've been doing. I think Megan and I were talking earlier. We were almost a victim of our own success at Sirius. Is we did such a great job of kind of introducing lead-centric processes and benchmarks that everybody is still stuck on it. Right? One of the things we're doing, a couple key things, right? So one assumption that I think is a root assumption that is wrong that we need to make sure everybody understands is when we talk about leading MQLs, people are like, everybody asks me, well, why aren't people important anymore? And they are, right? I mean, we're marketing to people. We need to understand that person and their role and their persona and where they are in their buyer's journey and what their concerns are. And we have to drive super relevant conversations for those people. But I think the important thing we have to get across to everybody is our end goal should not be a handoff of an individual person. And we don't want to judge the success of marketing based off of what we're doing with just an individual person, right? Our end goal has to be, we want to leverage and share and provide assistance to sales with all the insight that we have, right? And we're seeing 25, 30 interactions that are occurring during a buying cycle and 8, 10 people. And like I said, it's so much more important to understand all the interactions that are occurring as opposed to here's the one interaction that became the one person became the MQL. And kind of a funny story. So I still get asked about like marketing source pipeline and marketing source and all that. And I say, okay, time out. I've got a question. When you hire somebody, right, in your marketing department, what's the color requirement for the car that they drove to the interview? Do you hire people that drove blue cars, red cars, green cars? And they're like, well, that's stupid. And it's like, so how is that not more stupid than, oh, this person came from LinkedIn versus this person came from a website versus this person came from content syndication? It's all about the person and what I need to understand, right? And so we have to kind of recognize people are important. We're not ignoring our interactions, and we're not saying we don't want to measure the interactions with people, but we need to think about it in the context of we're having interactions with people that are related to buying groups and opportunities, right? Now back to your original question, it's hard for leaders, people that aren't really familiar with marketing. It's hard for them to completely withdraw from an MQL perspective. Right. And so one of the things guidance we're providing is to say, okay, we've got our standard dashboard reporting that we've been talking about forever. This is going to be an evolutionary step. So let's start to extend our dashboard a little bit and kind of go, okay, we've got stuff that we're feeding to our BDRs. Those are called MQLs. Coming out of the BDRs, we have meetings. That's really an important thing. That's the big thing. So we want to make sure that's bold, right? Of how many meetings we're producing. But what we want to understand is, I think about this concept of MQL, or now we call it prioritized. If we start showing, here's MQLs that were based off of one person, if somebody fills out a form and says, I want to talk to sales, right? We're not going to say, no, you have to go find 3 other people before we talk to you. We want to engage with people. So, there's going to be some quote unquote MQLs or prioritized where we have one person involved, right? And then we're going to have some others where we're starting to see additional people or see additional signals. And so let's expand our dashboard a little bit and say, okay, so, we had 1,000 MQLs last quarter and 75% of them right now were that one person. And here's the conversion rate we saw from that one person to a meeting. And if we have insight lower in funnel to revenue, here's what we're seeing. And here's kind of the conversion effectiveness for that one person path versus the path that says, here's an MQL, but it's with additional insight. And you're going to see different conversion rates. And you're still showing them like how many people we're engaging with. You're showing them conversion, but what they're going to see is, okay, so you're telling me when we have one person plus additional insight, our conversion rate goes from 11% to 16%. And today, 85% of the stuff we're sending is just one person. Why aren't we doing things to get better conversion? Get more people, because that's going to drive conversion. And then we go, exactly. Like that's the whole thing. But we've shown this in a much more incremental kind of path, and kind of spoon-fed them to help them recognize, hey, meetings are important, people are important, but it's people in the group that are really driving that gives us the value. So let's focus on, we have board members and have executives now going, okay, we're trying to change our MQL profile, essentially, where 90% of the MQLs we produce, we're producing with more signals. And that's how you almost have to just lead them to it and let them figure it out themselves, just based off of data. And like I said earlier, the key at the end of the day, it's business impact and data that's really going to get people's attention. So you have to just show that, hopefully they understand and believe it, and do it in a kind of incremental spoon-fed process. We could go on probably because we didn't even talk about like how you do it and all that, but I see we're kind of coming up at the end of the session.
And Terry, I'm just popping a link. We had a request for links in the comments. There are a lot of links. I just put a link to your bio from Forrester, or your blog, listings, because there's a lot of goodness in there, and that'll link over. But if there are other things that you'd like to share, by all means,
that's a great thing. Absolutely. So one that Megan's referring to, Amy Hawthorne and I published a blog series, and I think there's probably 20 different blogs. It's all around this whole transformation and how you do it, and why we're using the opportunity entity and all of that. So open, Megan gave you the link, and yeah, it's really informative. It gives you a lot of insight on this transformation. There's also a really good customer webinar, or prospect webinar, the Realo case study. And that was probably from October, I think, of last year. And it's basically even a case study. Obviously, it's how Realo made this transition. But the most important thing about the Realo story, from my perspective, is, and Megan, I don't know if you know the answer to this. We'll do pop quiz. How long do you think it took Realo to implement this transformation from MQLs to buying groups?
6 months.
So a lot of people would say 6 months on the low end. Most people will say, oh, that's a 1 year, 2 year project. They did it in 60 days.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And to be fair, they had a lot of tech stack that existed, but they had a lot of disconnection across their tech stack. Right. So they were using, an ABM platform and getting signals, but it really wasn't coordinated and orchestrated. But yeah, they pulled it together in 60 days. And the big reason ultimately was the executive leadership team kind of recognized the importance of it and set the culture that it's like, we're going to do whatever it takes to make this happen, do it as quickly as we can. And they changed the culture of the organization, and that then resulted in 60-day implementation. So
that's nuts.
I think
I'm
that's
looking
the
for the link so
takeaway.
I can, here we go. Okay. I think this is, that's a blog. Oh, found it. So, and Terry, I just want to put in a plug. You've got a pretty major event coming up in a few weeks. And I wonder, you mentioned programs of the year and the ROI awards. Those are such inspiring stories and such incredible proof points for people who want to say, this is a change we need to make. Look, here is documented, recognized public evidence of the quality of impact you can deliver with a program like this. Any preview you can share with us for what people can expect at the upcoming summit?
So couple things, right? So number one, you probably have heard me say this, but the waterfall, I think initially, back 10 years ago, it was viewed as a marketing tool, and sales didn't really care about it. The organization really didn't care about it. Marketing cared because it was helping them understand the performance. When we're making changes to the buying group, that leads to buying groups and everything, that, like I said, that fundamentally is changing the way we work and the way we collaborate across sales and marketing. So it's becoming a lot more strategic. And what we're also recognizing is the other piece in the puzzle that, sales and marketing alignment is great, but that's not all that impacts revenue. And so customer success really needs to be a key part of this, especially if, a large percentage of our revenue is going to come from existing customers. We're going to make a promise that buy my solution, you'll get this value. We need to actually deliver on that. And so one of the things we're doing in Summit, you'll see, it's kind of showing how this whole conversation has really become way more strategic. And we want to look at the entire life cycle, kind of mirror the customer life cycle of what are we doing as an organization to ensure that we're making the right promise and then delivering on that promise. And so we're pulling together the waterfall and the buyer line sales framework, which is basically what sales is doing when they get opportunity, and customer success processes all together into one sort of orchestrated concept we're calling an opportunity life cycle, right? And that's all focused on how do we ensure we're delivering the value to the customer that they're looking for across the entire experience, and how do we make sure we're doing the right things and orchestrate and collaborate. So that's a major keynote. And then there's a couple really interesting sessions underneath that. And I think one I mentioned earlier, I'm doing one on business impact and kind of looking at, the 3 growth drivers and where it comes from, and I'll show a model and all that. But I'm also doing a session, and I forget the exact title, but it's basically everybody's talking about saying goodbye to MQLs. Is anyone doing it? And we're going to have a panel, and we have 3 clients. So Siemens is actually in their second iteration of doing buying groups and opportunities. So we have Siemens and Palo Alto Networks and Zendesk, and they're going to be on a panel with me. And this is going to be all about what have they learned, what kind of tips and technique, and how do they help? What advice would they give to you guys on how to do that? And then doing another session at Summit on, it's basically congratulations, you're live on the new waterfall. Now what, right? And change management is a big piece of this. And so we're doing a session with Realo and co-presenting, and it's going to talk about what did change management mean to Realo? What, once they were live, how did they really make sure they had the adoption that they were hoping for? And what changed in marketing, and what changed in sales, and what changed in the BDR, and what changed in executive leadership? So I think those are the big ones. And then we're doing roundtables. I feel like Summit's basically dedicated to revenue process transformation in the waterfall this year.
That's
Well,
awesome.
it sounds like a great event, and I can attest to the quality of the content and the crazy level of effort that goes into preparing it. So best wishes to you on a fabulous event, Terry.
Yeah, thank you.
Terry, thank you for coming out today. And as expected, we had more content than we did time. We should have you come back if you're open to it when the dust settles after after your discussion.
Yeah, because we didn't really talk about the how.
Right.
And that's a big.
Maybe that'll be the next session.
Stay tuned next time.
Stay tuned. Yeah, we'll talk about how organizations do this.
Yeah,
and I think the key is it's easier than you think. And technology has advanced so much. We just saw a couple announcements yesterday and today on major organizations, major vendors doing more on buying groups. So let's do another one. I'll be glad to come back and let's talk how.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. I'm grateful for you investing time. Next week, speaking of time, and first of all, thank you, Gene and Deirdre, our faithful listeners. I will post those links if I can figure out how to extract them here. One way or the other, we'll get them posted up there. And next week, Meg, we have another guest as well. I'll give you the opportunity here to.
Actually, we have Lisa Nakano joining us, and Terry knows Lisa as do John and I, and Lisa is just a crazy knowledgeable expert on all things customer experience. And in particular, she's going to talk with us about there are a lot of different types of chief customer officers, and the one you need depends on the company and the goals that you have. So she's going to talk a little bit about how to understand those types, and then how to make a choice about what you need and if you need. And then the other part of that is to talk about the increasing impact and alignment of customer marketing with customer success, customer experience, all things customer. And this has just been an incredibly important topic in B2B right now. As Terry, to your earlier point, companies are focusing on not just acquisition, but increasingly on retention and expansion and advocacy. And Lisa has a lot of the keys to the kingdom to make that work. So we're very excited to welcome her next week.
Awesome. Well, with that, I think we'll give everybody their remaining negative 10 minutes back. We're grateful that you spent as much time with us as Terry did today. And yeah, we'll see you next week, same time.
Happy Friday,